Hello again, NBA fans. We are here with another NBA Roundtable. My name is Matt Eppers. I'm a digital producer at USA TODAY Sports, and we're back today to talk conference finals. The NBA is down to its final four, and we're going to dive into both series. To do that, I'm joined as always by my colleagues at USA TODAY Sports, Jeff Zillgitt and Mark Medina. To break down the Eastern Conference between the Bucks and the Hawks, we welcome back our friend Jim Owczarski of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Drew Holiday, no rest for the weary. You know, he started with Kyrie Irving, he ended with Kevin Durant. You know, he'll get the primary responsibility on Trae Young. I think, though, very similar to Durant in a way, I think it's going to have to be a team defensive effort for the Bucks. And like Jeff said, you know, he lives with that floater. Quite frankly, the floater is a shot that the Bucks, that they give up, but it also tends to be somewhat successful against them. The Hawks specifically this year, at times, you know, Young missed 2 of the 3 games, but it's a percentage shot they're willing to allow. He's really good at it. Also, I think Mark and Jeff can speak to this. The way Young manipulates spacing in the pick and roll, it's not normal. You know, like his rollers go, but maybe he doesn't give it right away, and it sort of requires everyone on the court to pay attention, maybe a little longer or in different spots than they're used to. So that might be the adjustment the Bucks have to make, considering how much he handles the ball.
Yeah, just to Jim's point real quick, the way he delays with that pick and roll, he really surveys the court. And then the secondary part of that floater, sometimes he disguises it and he's throwing a lob to Clint Capella or John Collins cutting to the rim behind that back line of the defense. Look, I anticipate this being really fun. I do like Jim's point about the Bucks getting back to what they do, a little bit more ball movement. At the beginning of this series, I'd like to see the Bucks extend that bench just a little bit, whether it means some more minutes for Bryn Forbes, or whether they need to bring Bobby Portis, back into the rotation. But just the way the series ended, with being exhausted, a short bench, maybe it helps at the beginning of the series to get some guys active and give them a chance.
Yeah, I would agree that among the teams that are still remaining in the NBA playoffs, that the Bucks are the favorites. Now, I think that as we've seen throughout this season, there is a feeling that anything can happen. Everything's wide open. For worse, a lot of teams have not been immune from unforeseen injuries, so that's always a factor that you have to think could be a theme moving forward as well. But I think even if all things are being equal, there is just so much parity right now. But I think when you add in the fact that, you know, the Bucks have Giannis, they have a lot more experience, that I would give them the edge over Phoenix and the Clippers. But, you know, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised with any scenario. I mean, even the Hawks, I certainly did not anticipate that the Hawks would be at this stage. I thought that they would be, a nice first round story that was a speed bump for whoever they faced. But I just feel like I've thrown all expectations out the window this season because of just all the unique challenges and the moving parts with injuries and fluid rosters.
As long as Kawhi Leonard is out, you know, Paul George is going to be in the spotlight and looked at to continue being that number one option for the Clippers. What have you seen from him that makes you think he can continue playing at such a high level without Kawhi?
Well, I think to Paul's credit, this isn't something that's new to him. He was a number one guy with the Indiana Pacers. And don't get it twisted, the Clippers are a better team with Kawhi Leonard on the floor, obviously. But with Kawhi out, I don't think that there has to be as much thinking that Paul is considering of, you know, how do I play the game the right way? I don't think that, in fairness to either of those guys, there was ever a feeling of, hey, we got to make sure that Kawhi gets his touches and we have to make sure that Paul gets his touches. It was always kind of just a feel out and take what the defense gives you. But I think, you know, with Paul specifically, he wasn't always consistently aggressive, partly because I think that he knew that Kawhi Leonard's on the floor and he's a really good player. And so I think because there is that less margin for error feel and the all hands on deck sort of feel, he knows that he has no other choice but to be aggressive and look for his shot. And, you know, the other thing that I give Paul credit for is with Kawhi, without Kawhi, while he had struggles earlier in the season with his consistency with his shooting, unlike last year, most notably in the bubble, he did not allow shooting performances to affect his ability to have impact elsewhere, whether it was defense or just staying engaged with the game. But there's no doubt that, he's going to have really good performances on a game-by-game basis, because you're not going to have that security blanket with Kawhi. And I trust that Paul is going to have those games. It's now a matter of, what are we going to get collectively from all the Clippers role players? And is that enough, frankly, that even if they're doing all the right things, to match up with what Phoenix is doing, because they are the real deal.
Devin Booker's breakout has been another big storyline this season, and Duane, you mentioned that the scoring from him has been there. The other things, the assists, the rebounds, those can be a little hit or miss sometimes, but I think he's played with a lot of poise and composure for his first postseason experience too. Where does that come from, and how has Chris Paul sort of helped him in that regard?
Well, Chris's impact has been tremendous on Devin in terms of just how to approach the game, mindset for the game, and things of that nature. But I think when it comes to Devin, he understands that this is his time. This opportunity is one that he's been waiting on, and he's just taking full advantage of it and sensing the moment and his ability. There were early in his career where they just put the ball in his hands and said, go make something happen. And through trial and error, he's figured out how to be a playmaker. And then he's now improved as a playmaker. But all the numbers that Devin has put up, the number I keep harping on when it comes to Devin Booker, turnovers. When it's low, then he's playing at a very high level. He had 2 in 44 minutes against the Clippers in game 1. If he's at that 1 to 2 turnover a game, that means that now you got to defend more of him, getting a shot off, or finding someone else, or drawing the defense and then someone else getting a shot. So all the turnovers to me is what separates Devin. When that number's low, he's having a great game regardless. But if that number's high, that means that they're not valuing the possessions. He's not valuing the possessions enough, and other teams are going the other way in transition. So in terms of Chris's impact is seen throughout just his approach to the game. But Chris Paul hadn't taught him how to shoot, hadn't taught him how to dribble, hadn't taught him how to be that guy that goes and go get it. The common link with those two is chip. They both play with a chip on their shoulder. So that's why they get along so well, because they're both, as Chris Paul would say, they're both dogs. So when you have that kind of edge, sometimes it can overflow, and Devin gets into it with the refs entirely too much. But, I think that he's figured out a way, just in that sense, of how to communicate with the officials. And then maybe you see later in the game, he gets a call and you're like, maybe that's something he learned from Chris Paul as well, how to work the refs.
Whoever ends up winning this championship, it's going to be at least 5 decades since that franchise has won, if they've even ever won a championship. And so those are lots of reasons that I'm going to lay out that, I'm looking forward to these series and the finals. And look, whether or not they all end up being great games, that's just at the faith of the basketball gods right there. But there should be a lot of compelling basketball in these series.